Spring football practice for North Carolina has been over for more than a week now, but on Tuesday, Coach Mack Brown and both coordinators met with the media for around 2 hours. So today I'm going to tell you everything they said. No, I'm just playing with you. I wouldn't do that to you. What we're going to do today is unpack some major storylines from some of the offensive skill set positions. So, the quarterback showdown, an overcrowded running back room, and I want to talk about a potentially unexpected matchup nightmare who's going to line up all over the field for the Tar Heels. Who is it? We'll find out, all coming up on today's episode of Locked On Tar Heels.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, it's Wednesday, April 20th, 2022. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast. I'm your host, Isaac Shade, beat writer for Sports Illustrated's All Tar Heels site. And I want to thank you for making Locked On Tar Heels your first listen every single day. Please, if you would, go and subscribe and download wherever it is you listen to podcasts. We're getting really close to the point of having 1,000 daily downloads and would love to have you help us get there. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, thanks for making this your first watch every day. And go ahead, while you're there, subscribe, hit that like button so we see who all is diving in and being part of the YouTube video. Thank you for being part of the Locked On Tar Heels community on whichever platform you are joining us. Well, as we said, today we're going to talk some Carolina football on the offensive side. Coach Mack Brown and both coordinators met with the media on Tuesday, and specifically we're going to talk about a lot of what Coach Phil Longo said, the offensive coordinator, to the media. An interesting factoid, not related specifically to the offense, but on Monday, USA Today put out some ACC preseason rankings. Seems like an odd time to do it, but whatever, we'll take it. It's content, right? And USA Today had Carolina ranked third in the ACC behind number one, you guessed it, Clemson. But number two, you might not have thought about, but it is the Wolf Puppies. NC State is ranked second, according to USA Today, and then the Tar Heels come in at third. Honestly, it's probably a good position for the Tar Heels, coming back off a less than stellar year and a lot of inexperience on several places on the field, and in particular some of the major skill positions. So we're going to have to look and see what happens there. Chief of those question marks, skill position wise, is the quarterback battle, the quarterback conversation. What's it going to be? Well, that was obviously a major talking point for Coach Longo in his press conference. And ultimately, here's what he said. This is a direct quote from him. Most of the time, not all the time, the guys competing for the job wind up deciding the starter on their own. And so I think the common perception is often that we've got Drake Maye and that we've got Jacolby Criswell, and they're going to be even, and then the coaches are going to put their heads together and decide what's going to happen. And what Coach Longo is saying is that that's not always necessarily the case. And that, in fact, more often than not, it's the quarterbacks through their play, both this spring and what will happen in the fall, that'll help decide it for the coaches, where it will become potentially obvious for everyone. To talk about it, he referenced back, Coach Longo did reference back to 2019 when Sam Howell was coming in. Keep in mind, Sam Howell didn't win the starting job in spring. It was very similar to this year, where he won the job in the fall because of his play. That spring, it was he and Jace and Cade. You remember those guys, all three of them. At that point, it's kind of unknown what's going to happen. And so Coach Longo said, listen, our goal was not to pick one of these players in the spring. Our goal was to teach them the offense in the spring. We knew we wouldn't name a starter at that point. We just wanted to teach the offense, let them get their best command of it, work with that over the summer to figure out what made sense, who could own it the best. And so those guys, all three of them, did all the summer work, working to grow their leadership ability, their grasp of the offense. And then come August, it was time for them to compete and see who could bring it together. And this is how Coach Longo said it came together.
And then in August, they competed, and Sam was the more prepared and the more talented, and so I really didn't need to name him. Coach Brown didn't need to name him. He established that himself, and so we started Sam, and the rest is history. Now.
All right, so you heard what Coach Longo said there, that Sam was the one that was most ready to go and clearly separated himself from the others. And so it wasn't Coach Longo or Coach Brown or anyone that had to, pull a name out of the hat or make a hard decision. Sam Howell made the decision very easy by what he did, and I love how he said, and the rest is history. But now we're living in the immediate aftermath of that history, and it looks like that's how this season is going to play out as well. You've got Criswell, you've got Maye, and they're going to have the summer to continue gaining command of the playbook, gaining trust and rapport with their teammates and coaches, community probably even, and see then as we get into the fall, is one of them going to separate themselves from the other? Coach Longo did allude to the fact that both he and Coach Brown have utilized a 2-quarterback system and done so to success in the past, and so he didn't rule that out and said he felt comfortable to speak for Coach Brown on that it's something that they would do if it made the most sense. But he said, obviously, ideally, you want somebody to be the guy. Now, you notice that I'm specifying it to Jacolby Criswell or Drake Maye, and I haven't talked much about freshman Connor Harrell. And not because he hasn't done well or because he isn't someone that can do well or work his way in, but Coach Longo made it very obvious that it is between these two guys and said, essentially, listen, Harrell is going to be a great quarterback and people are going to know his name and who he is and what he's doing in his time at Carolina. But right now, for this season, the 2022 season, it's Criswell or Maye. It's going to be one of those two. So we at least have that level of information for us. And interestingly, that USA Today capsule of the Carolina roster that I talked about with where it said the Tar Heels would be third in the ACC preseason, it talked about it as a 3-way battle for the quarterback position. But that is inaccurate, straight from the offensive coordinator's mouth. That is not going to be the case. Again, it's going to be the same approach as spring 2019, except we've got these two guys and we know it's going to be one of them, if not both, if that's what makes sense. What's awesome is that they both have some really good versatility, as does Connor Harrell. In fact, Coach Longo said this: we would have loved to run Sam over the course of his 3 years. I couldn't do that, though, because of depth issues the first 2 years. But last year we were able to do that because Jacolby and Drake provided us with that depth. Meaning, if Sam gets hurt running, you can bring in Jacolby or Drake and feel comfortable about it. And then he says this year, meaning 2022, we have 3 guys that are really mobile. They're all really good laterally, so we will do some things to move them around a little bit and take advantage of their athleticism. However, he went on to say that using their feet as a weapon is secondary to the idea of them getting the ball out quickly to receivers and letting those receivers make plays. Here's one of the biggest things we'll be on the lookout for, and this will be part of the summer and heading into the fall, is preparation. Coach Longo talked about one of the things that's going to set Sam Howell apart at the next level in the NFL is his ability to prepare, and how that is just something very unique to Sam Howell. But here's what's cool. He has passed that down to Criswell and Maye. They both got to sit alongside him and learn that over the past time together that they spent in the quarterback room at Carolina. Those guys both saw it firsthand, and now they are both, Maye and Criswell, passing that same level of preparation on to Connor Harrell, and so that he's able to now really start wrapping his head around what it means to be a legit preparer. And so really excited and interested to see that coming to fruition. Who's going to be the quarterback? We're going to have to wait and find out in the fall, Patience, my friends, but it's the exact same thing as we went through with Sam Howell. And when the time came in the fall, we all knew exactly who it would be. Hopefully, the same will be true in 2022. Well, the quarterback battle is the one that's obviously going to get all the publicity, all the headlines, and that's great. But there is potentially an even bigger, more heated ground for one of the other position battles, and that is the running back room. So we're going to have to talk about that battle in just a second. But first, let me tell you about Built Bar. Built Bars are great candy bar replacement options covered in 100% real chocolate. Some of the great flavors include mint brownie puffs, brownie batter puffs, and I was just scrolling through their site earlier and noticed that they have churro flavor. Yeah, I need to try that as soon as possible. So all these flavors are delicious. Built Bar's coming out with more stuff all the time. And Built Bar is all about the taste. They do that work first, make it taste delicious, and then they go back and figure out how to make it healthy so that you know it's what you need for your body. And I don't know how they do that, but they pull it off every time. So go to Built.com, scroll down to the macros chart, and you're going to love what you see. High protein, low calories, high fiber, low carb. It's great. Here's some of the specific numbers. 130 calories, that's it. Just 4 net carbs, just 4 grams of sugar, and yet 17 grams of protein. That's great stuff. Compare that to a normal candy bar, which usually has around 240 calories, 30 grams of sugar, and dozens of net carbs. So, you know what to choose. Go to Built.com and use promo code LOCKED15, and you're going to get 15% off your next order. Again, that's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. Keep in mind, we are just over a week away from the NFL Draft, and Locked On NFL Draft's live coverage is going to have you covered. This live coverage of the 2022 NFL Draft, all 3 days of real-time analysis from our extensive lineup of experts and insiders. In fact, I'm going to be on the show Saturday talking a little bit about Sam Howell and where he has landed, so get ready for that awesomeness to ensue. And for those of you dying to know who your team's going to take in advance, don't worry, we got you covered leading up as well. So catch Odyssey and Locked On NFL Mock Draft special hosted by Brian Peacock and former scout Matt Williamson of the Peacock and Williamson NFL show. Again, all week leading up to that first pick on Thursday. Well, as I said, the next thing we're going to talk about is, we got our quarterback battle. But man, let's take a peek inside the running back room because this thing is overcrowded with dudes who all want playing time. And so it's the reps battle at running back that's going to be the most, what I think is going to be the most interesting and likely hotly contested positional battle. And so as Coach Longo said in his press conference on Tuesday, Coach Porter has a challenge on his hands trying to figure out how to get the ball in everyone's hands, how to feed all these mouths, how to figure out who can compete, who wants to do this and do it well. And so, ultimately, yes, it's a good problem to have, but it is something of a problem that he is going to have to do it. How do you allow all these young men to show you what they can do so that you can put the best talent on the field in any given scenario or situation or game, depending on what it calls for? So let's run quickly through these various players based on some of what Coach Longo talked about on Tuesday and what we learned about how they did in spring practice. We'll start off with British Brooks. And who would have thought, that coming into the 2022 season, British Brooks is seemingly at the top of the heap for reps to start at running back, but that's where we are. He really showed some things there at the end of the 2021 season and decided to come back and has put himself as a super senior in prime position to take hold of, I think this running back battle is his to lose ultimately. What Coach Longo said about British Brooks at spring practice was just very simply, British was British, meaning you know what you're going to get with him. There's nothing, he's not wavering up and down. He's just solid and consistent. And in some ways, that's exactly what you need. Sometimes you might wish you had a higher ceiling for your starting running back if that's what he ends up being. But also there's comfort in knowing that the floor is not low. He's going to be consistent and give you good production. Now, here's the nice thing. In a scenario where you're trying to figure out as an offensive coordinator or as a running back coach, how do I get all these guys reps? Again, Coach Longo said British was British, meaning you know what you're going to get. And so also, it's his 5th go-round, right? And so he doesn't need quite as many reps to get his legs up under him or to show the coaching staff what he can do, because they already know. So that means they can steal some reps for him to parcel out to some of the other running backs, one of whom is junior DJ Jones. Showed some great flashes last year, but some injury issues set him back at times. And so Coach Longo said that he has had a healthy spring, had a really good spring, and so he was able to get some more reps, really continue to show what he can do, again, if healthy, which he was in the spring. And so it really seems right now like it's Brooks and Jones that are going to get the lion's share of the work. But who knows, because of what we're going to learn later. Now, third person on this list that Coach Longo mentioned is somebody that they wanted to see really get some reps to see what he can do, and that is upcoming sophomore Caleb Hood, who he, again, said they wanted more reps for, but unfortunately the spring was in and out with injuries. Nothing serious. He's going to be, should be ready for the fall. But just wasn't able to be out there as consistently as either he or the coaching staff would have liked. The upshot, the good side of that, is it's more reps that they can steal away to parcel out to some of the other unknown quantities. Somebody that Coach Longo mentioned had a fantastic spring. He said, some of the direct quotes he said was, "This young man really flashed this spring. This is as good as we've seen him. He's got home run speed if he can break the line," and that is redshirt sophomore Elijah Green. And so, somebody who in his own right is very talented, just hasn't really yet had the opportunity to showcase that or show it. But with this really good spring, he might have found himself some opportunity, particularly if Brooks, something happens injury-wise to him, or he just isn't able to maintain for some reason that consistency that he found at the end of last year. Maybe Jones, who's had some injury struggles, deals with that, and then there's an opportunity for Green to come in. Be watching that. Just some of those subtle phrases that Coach Longo was using about him were really encouraging. Another freshman you got, although a redshirt freshman, is Kamaro Edmonds. Coach Longo didn't talk about him on Tuesday, but I just want to mention his name because he is part of that running backs room. He was injured all spring and so didn't see any time. But the other running back that Coach Longo did talk about is a true freshman in George Pettaway, who was an early enrollee back in January, and really showed some big play capability in spring. With these freshmen, you don't know what to expect. Are they going to come in? How are they going to transition? All of that stuff. But it really seems like Pettaway made a good impression. Coach Brown talked about, when was it? A week or so ago, that Pettaway, he was a little concerned about ball security, as you are with any freshman who just hasn't had to deal with that much on the high school level. But Pettaway, Coach Longo compared him to Michael Carter. In fact, said he's got some of that same skill set, twitchy, change of direction, slasher. He just talked about him wheeling around and doing all sorts of stuff. And so really interested to see if that comparison holds any water, or if that's just something Coach has seen little glimpses of in spring and isn't a long-term thing. Hopefully it is. Heck, if you have somebody of Michael Carter's capability on your roster, would love that to be a thing. Excuse me. Now, also keep in mind, there's another true freshman coming in at June, a June enrollee, and that is Omarion Hampton. He's coming in June, and so we're going to see what the Tar Heels have in him as well, but we won't really get to see that until the fall. So stay tuned. A lot of times these freshmen are going to end up redshirting, especially in an overcrowded room. But if he can pop and just blow up, he's going to get his shot. He's going to get his reps. and you never know what can happen. Now, the ultimate goal, as Coach Longo said, is that he'd love to get it narrowed down to 3 guys by the time of the first game. And would love to see that be the number. I've also heard Coach Brown talk about 4, and so maybe it's somewhere in that range. But similar to the quarterback battle, Coach Longo ultimately said, same thing with the quarterbacks. I expect that it's going to play itself out on the field. These running backs are going to show us who it's going to be. Now, if you're, is it going to be one main guy like you would have with Ty Chandler last year? Is it going to be kind of a running back by committee like we had 2 years ago with Michael Carter and Javonte Williams, who just have this level of trust and understanding of when to check in for one another and when to check out? That will be really interesting to see how that plays out. So will we get a guy, a workhorse, a bell cow, or is it going to be running back by committee? My take on it is, as I said at the very beginning, I think Brooks is going to get the first crack at it as the elder statesman, as somebody that has the respect of his teammates, but we're going to have to see that play out. Maybe DJ Jones goes off. Maybe Elijah Green is just showing out and is going to get the first reps. Who knows? I'm going with Brooks, though, as of, April 20th. We've got months to go, but that's where I'm at. Okay, now I promised you an unexpected matchup nightmare person who projects to be lining up, slotting up all over the field to wreak havoc, hopefully, on the defense. Who is that going to be? I'm going to tell you in just one moment. But first, let me tell you about Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing number of makes and models of cars, it's nearly impossible for your local auto parts store to store and stock everything you need. Well, why go to the store and go through all those questions that you don't know the answers to anyway? Like, hey, Isaac, what trim is your Pilot? Is it LX, EX, Touring? Man, I don't know. I got to look it up every stinking time, when I could just store it all on Rock Auto, get online to their website, and not have to wait on a salesman to go find a part for me or order it from some other store, but I can get it, and Rock Auto's got it in stock for me. Also, Rock Auto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. That consistency is something that you can believe in. Rock Auto's prices are reliably low for every customer, and then their inventory, again, it has everything that you need. So go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck. Write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so that they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. That's rockauto.com. All right, so one of the interesting storylines is that due to some transfers, due to some injury stuff, the wide receiver room, while the running backs are overcrowded, while the running backs are overcrowded, the wide receivers need some help, really just working with around 8 of them right now. Now, thankfully, you've got a stud in Josh Downs, who is going to be there. You've got Antoine Green, who Coach Longo said is showing his most confidence ever, and that's what you want. Remember, all last season we talked about we just need a compliment to Josh Downs, so it doesn't have to be all Josh Downs all the time. And so, again, in some ways, this lack of receivers is a good thing because it allows for a tighter bond, a tighter connection between the 2 quarterbacks, Drake Maye, Jacolby Criswell, and these 8 receivers. And so they can read each other better, all of that kind of stuff. However, at the same time, with the lack of receivers means that you have to start getting a little bit creative with how you can utilize the talent available to you to turn things in your favor as an as a coordinator. And so one of the ways to do this is by taking advantage of unicorns, right? Of unique talent, unique skill sets. For the Tar Heels, that manifests itself now in the form of sophomore tight end Bryson Nesbit, and that he is specifically this matchup nightmare that I've been hinting at and alluding to. He's 6 foot 6 inches and a quarter. Man, you got to get that quarter in there. It's listed on the roster. So we got to make sure we say it right. Yeah. And 220 pounds. Beast of a dude. Now, last year, very modest numbers, 7 receptions, 154 yards, and a touchdown. But was a freshman, had guys ahead of him, and so you get that. In fact, coming into this year, on the tight end depth chart, he's behind junior Kamari Morales, who had something of a sophomore breakout himself last year. Nothing overwhelming or eye-popping for Morales last year, but he had 24 receptions, 220 yards for 5 TDs. In fact, in the first half of the season, he had 4 straight games with a touchdown. In fact, one of those was at Georgia Tech, had a career-high 7 receptions, had a career-high 66 yards, and so you would expect Morales to continue taking steps forward now as he becomes the man with Walston gone, and that is what he will do. Now, could Bryson Nesbit, a matchup nightmare, again, keep in mind all these other tight ends, right at 6 foot 6'1", and so Nesbit's got almost half a foot on each of them. And so, could he be looking at a similar leap his sophomore year as Morales had last year? I think potentially and probably so, but here's the kicker. It's not going to be just as a tight end. Why so? Well, one of the things is when you have a player you can utilize with a very unique skill set, a very unique body and build like Nesbit, you got to figure out how to get him the ball in space or literally in vertical space up above smaller DBs or slower linebackers or whomever may be on him. And so you want to move him all around the field, not just as a tight end, but also as a receiver. And that's what Coach Longo is talking about doing with Nesbit. Coach Longo wants to use all of that to cause issues for their opponents. He said, quote, he's a mismatch guy. Just very simply, I love that. And so what they want to do is find ways to promote that more. How do we exploit these mismatches? And so what's neat is when you look at your various receiver skill sets, Josh Downs, he said, poses a different skill set. I'll verbalize this, but for those watching, he said, you got a guy that's like this, and he pointed his hand lower, and a guy that's like this, and he got his hand way up there to show Downs being shorter and Nesbit way up there. But also said, one of these guys you just can't catch because he's so fast, alluding to Downs, and the other is just this big physical specimen with great range, meaning Nesbit. And so to have that dichotomy of two different style receivers that can both be game breakers in their different way, that's incredible. In fact, he went so far as to say, quote, he is a different talent we haven't had here in the past. Speaking again of Nesbit. And so I think this could be something we really need to keep our eyes on. Is this just an offensive coordinator blowing smoke? I don't think so. I think this is legitimately a weapon that whichever quarterback wins out could utilize much to their advantage. And so one of the things that helps that Coach Longo talked about is the development of Kamari Morales and also another tight end, John Copenhaver. That their development, their growth afford this deep tight end room to move Nesbit all over the field. And so he said, yeah, we feel great about our tight end room right now. And so because of that, that means Bryson Nesbit can go do some different things. How do we utilize his, again, very unique skill set and get him the ball? Well, very encouraging signs all over the field for the Tar Heels offensive skill sets. Obviously, we got a lot more content we can unpack from these end of spring practice press conferences from Coach Brown and on all the defensive things and all the offensive things. So there's certainly more to talk about, even on offense. We didn't even get to the line or any of that today. So much more to come on the football team as we transition out of basketball. There's obviously tons more basketball content to come, But just know now it's time to start moving more into football mode. So that is very much coming. Well, that is it for today's episode of Locked on Tar Heels. Thanks so much for diving in. As always, please, would you go and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, or if you're watching on YouTube, hit all those subscribe buttons. That would be great. You can follow the show at Locked on Heels. You can follow me at Isaac Shade, ISAACSCHADE. Coming up on tomorrow's show, what is now becoming a weekly conversation with football recruiting insider John Garcia Jr. If you follow football recruiting at all, you know him. He is Sports Illustrated's main college football recruiting guy, and guess what? Now he's part of the Locked On family as well. And so we're going to have the opportunity to take advantage of that relationship and have John be on the show, hopefully weekly going forward. And so on tomorrow's show, we're going to talk with him about Carolina's 3 transfers coming in. So Corey Gaynor, Noah Taylor, who are all already both in for Carolina, and Spencer Rolland, who will be coming in when he finishes his current school year. All right, friends, thank you so much for making Locked on Tar Heels your first listen every single day. And now I want to make you available to the opportunity to make Locked on NFL Draft your second listen today. Ryan Tracy and former NFL cornerback Eric Crocker bring the NFL Draft to life every single day with insight and analysis on college football prospects and NFL front offices. Just like every other show on the Locked On family, it's free and available everywhere you get podcasts. Well, hey, it's Hump Day. Thank you so much for spending part of it talking Carolina sports with me. It's fun and exciting now to start transitioning our brains to football, and so hopefully you enjoyed this conversation. Can't wait to start hearing your feedback about the 2022 football team and what you think the expectations are. Hey, and remember, it's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. Until tomorrow, peace!